Ladies and guys who wish they had a time machine to go back. Andy here, author of the best Tinder guide on the internet. This is the Kill You in a Loser show. Let's fucking go. I got Imogen, my girlfriend, right here next to me. Oh my God. And speaking of time machines, if you're wondering why I have my hat like this, it's because I want to go back to the 90s when everyone wore their hat on the side and it was cool and it wasn't weird. It's actually really uncomfortable. It really doesn't feel good. How come no one does it anymore? Like, everyone in the 90s used to do that. It's so fucking cool. No, it's cool. You're all just like fucking losers. So, from one winner to another, I don't know what the end of that sentence was, but today's topic is going to be, would we go back in time and give ourselves advice on a couple of different topics? And what advice would we give to ourselves? Now, I'm not someone that has regrets. Generally speaking, I don't like to live my life with regrets. I think that that's a waste of time. Maybe I'll do a podcast on that at some point. But it can be fun to, and you don't want to do this too much to sit there and like jerk yourself off, but sometimes it can be fun to think like, oh, I'm in a better position than I was like 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever. If I could go back in time and give myself some advice, what would that be? And I think people like this topic for some reason. I see a lot of these kind of videos where someone's like, what advice would I give to me in my 20s? Or what advice would I give to a guy in his 20s? So you and I are going to give advice to our past selves, which is hilarious because you're 20 fucking one, but you're going to give advice to your like 18-year-old self. You fucking child. And me being a real man in my 30s, you know, I got plenty of fucking experience. So I'm going to go back and tell my dipshit past self some stuff, but we'll keep it fun. And we've got different topics here: dating and sex, money, fitness / health, mental health, and social skills. We're going to do one each for each of those things. And we're also going to say what age we would go back to. So if we could go back to any particular age. So anywhere in our life, what moment in time would we go back to, and what snippet of information would we give to ourselves on that particular topic? So you can go first, young lady. And the first one that you're going to do is dating / let's do these separately. Let's do dating and sex separately. So say dating. What age would you go back to, and what piece of advice would you give to old dipshit dumbass Imogen, who knew nothing and was just a complete fucking train wreck of a human being and just like absolutely like shouldn't be allowed to vote because she was so dumb?
Okay.
No offense. I'm just saying our past selves were dumb. Everybody's past self is dumb.
I would probably go back to 18-year-old Imogen. Because 18-year-old Imogen didn't believe in love. I was like adamant that like I wasn't going to get feelings, that I wasn't ever going to do romance or emotions with like somebody else. So yeah, it would basically be me telling myself that like that's a bit dumb. It's going to be a lot easier if you just open yourself up to that, because it's scary, but it's ultimately okay. I had like a lot of kind of emotional baggage to work through with love and relationships. So
yeah, you were convinced that love, like you'd never fall in love, and you were like, I can't get feelings, I don't want to get attached, I want to keep it super casual. A big part of that was because your parents divorced, and so you were trying to like protect yourself from that shit. Of like, relationships just end, and your parents' divorce was messy. And so it's like, if I can just keep my you see this a lot with girls, especially on Tinder. I mean, guys are probably doing it too. We just don't see that. So let's just maybe say people do it, I'm assuming, where they'll like have a bad childhood experience or whatever, or they've just been hurt before and they want to just like keep it super casual. And so they're convinced like, I won't get feelings. And then it's like, yeah, that I even told you when we'd seen each other a couple of times, you were like, I'm never going to get feelings. Like you boldly, proudly proclaimed that. And I was like, come back in 3. I literally said to you, remember, I can remember the exact moment. We were in the shower together after sex, and I said to you, wait 3 months and you'll have feelings for me. And you were like, nope, I'm an 18-year-old who knows everything, and I will not get feelings for you. And I was like, dumbass, like wait 3 months. And how long did it take for you to tell me that you had feelings for me? It was about 3 months. You're like, I really like you. And I was like, oh, okay, but I thought you wouldn't get feelings. And then a little bit after that, you know, it took a long time. It took a lot of telling you everything would be okay, but you were like, you know, I think I love you. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I thought you couldn't get feelings there, young lady. So that turned out to be goofy as fuck. And did anything bad happen when you got feelings? Even though you were scared of like, oh my God, what if I get rejected?
Like nothing terrible's happened. Like, yes, there's been stuff that's been hard to deal with.
Because getting feelings does emotionally open you up, of course.
Yeah, and I think having an open relationship, we've had to work through a lot. So there's probably been elements of like, I don't know, maybe heartbreak's a bit dramatic, but like some very intense feelings there. But
yeah, because for context, this is your first relationship.
Yeah.
And everybody's first relationship, they feel everything really strongly. And I've had to tell you a million times, like, no, everything's okay. Like, especially like early on in the first couple of years, when you would take things to heart, like way more, like if I was ever disappointed in you for something, you'd be like, oh my God, he's going to leave me. I knew it. Oh my God, it's going to fall apart. And it's like, no, this is kind of what happens in a relationship. Like sometimes you are disappointed in each other and you're like, oh, okay. So you're not going to leave me because like I let you down one time, and I'm like, no. And then you're like, oh, okay. Like, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right, my turn.
I don't want to take a drink when I'm talking.
That's good water. Who made that? That's beautiful. That's really good water. I like that. I could drink that again. I might try this. So what age would I go back to give myself dating advice? I would go back to one of my first two relationships. So either when I was like 18, 19, or maybe when I was like, I don't know, maybe I'd go back to like 25. Because both of those relationships were just toxic as fuck. I've talked about that in the past. Just horrible relationships. And I think the advice I would tell myself is like, if you're not happy, you're allowed to leave. I did a podcast a couple of days ago called The Only 4 Questions That Matter. And I said, are you happy? Is she happy? Is it a net positive, you being with her? And then is she getting a net positive out of it from being with you? And the answer to all 4 of those questions in both those bad relationships would have been a hard, resounding fuck no. I was not happy. She was not happy. Way more negatives than positives for both of us. And yet I stayed. So that would be the advice I'd give to myself. I'd be like, you're not happy. Neither of you is getting anything out of it other than negativity. And maybe like, oh, we get to go on road trips, or I have feelings for her, or I love her. We've been together for 4 years. Like, that's not a reason to stay with someone. So I would have given myself permission to get the fuck out, basically. Right, Miss, what age would you go back to, and what advice would you give for sex? And while you answer that, I'm going to have some more of this water. This is good.
Mine's pretty straightforward. I would go back to my 17-year-old self, maybe even 16, but probably 17, and tell myself, you don't need to lose your virginity right now. I don't know where you got that from, but it's fine if you're a virgin at 17. There is nothing wrong with that, and do not force yourself to drunkenly have sex with somebody that you're not all that attracted to.
Yeah, too many girls do that shit where they're like, I gotta lose it. I got pressure to lose it. I mean, I guess you can say guys do too.
I think it's similarly to a guy. It's like, oh, like I'm like a loser if I lose my virginity.
And I get the pressure of a guy of wanting to do it. Because for a guy, there is more of an accomplishment there. It's like you have to actually do something. Whereas for a girl, it's more just like you have to say yes. And so for a guy, it's like I haven't achieved this thing yet. But guys go way too, like you just hinted at, they go way too far in that direction, and they say, I'm a loser until I've done this. It's like, no, you're not. You just haven't done it yet. That's like saying, I'm a loser until I run a marathon. No, you're not. You just haven't run a fucking marathon yet. So just get laid. It'll happen if you just work on it, if you improve yourself, if you just go out in there and talk to women, right? You don't have to be a god. You don't have to look like some bodybuilder superhero to get laid. You just have to talk to a bunch of women, do a bad job of it at first. Of course you will. You'll be nervous. You're a virgin. And then just get laid. Or, you know, I did a podcast a couple of days ago with a guy from my coaching group who decided he's 29. He was sick of being a virgin. And I said, like, dude, if you want to, just go see an escort. And he's like, okay. And he went and saw an escort. You know, I didn't even need to tell him. I just threw that out there casually. Like, you know, you could see an escort if you wanted to. And he did 4 days later. He's fucking glad he did. Now he's actually starting to get laid, or he's working on getting laid and stuff like that. So there's a million ways you can lose your virginity if you are a guy. But just don't. I get the pressure of wanting to do it, and it's definitely a good accomplishment, and I will always give you credit for doing it because it is difficult when you have all those insecurities and fears, but don't beat yourself up when you haven't done it yet. It's just something you're fucking working on. As long as you're working on it. Don't sit on the couch and play video games, you know, for your whole life. Yeah, then you don't get any credit, and then maybe you should yell at yourself because you are just being lazy, but yeah. So my sex advice, when would I go back to? Maybe when I was like fucking 11 and I was discovering masturbation. I've told this story before. And I thought I died because like I was figuring out masturbation and I was like jerking off, and I jerked off for like 3 months without ever like coming because I didn't know that there was such a thing as orgasm. So I would just like jerk off for like 5 fucking minutes and then stop and go to sleep. And then at one point I was like, what happens if I just keep going? So I kept going for like half an hour and then like I obviously had an orgasm. But my body was like, you know how like you convulse and like you shake and clench, like, which feels good. But at the time I thought I was dying. I'm like, oh shit, like my body's like convulsing. I thought I was dying. I literally thought I was fucking dying, and like stuff came out of my dick and I could feel it, and I was like, shit, because it was in the dark at night, and I was like, shit, that's blood. I'm like my organs are coming out or something, like out of my dick, and so I'm like literally scared. I'm like, I'm gonna die. My parents are gonna be mad at me because I killed myself, and then for some reason, like my genius move was like, maybe I'll go to sleep and like, I don't know, sleep it off or something. Because I was too terrified. I was thinking of going and waking them up. I should have in hindsight. They would have just been like, oh, sweetie, like, you little fucking loser. That's called orgasm. You fucking weirdo. And so, yeah, so that's mine. Tell my 11-year-old self, like, what a fucking orgasm is.
Yeah, just so he doesn't have to go to bed thinking about death.
I thought I died. And then I woke up and, like, nothing was wrong. Like, there's nothing there, obviously, because it dried. And I was like, oh, shit, there's no blood. Like, I'm a real man now. All right, your next one is money. What advice would you go back, or what age would you go back to tell yourself about money? And what advice? That was a bad sentence. That was a shit sentence. Delete this fucking podcast. Where's the delete button?
I think that...
Hang on, let me delete this.
The advice that I'm going to give...
I deleted the podcast. It's done. Don't say no to me, young lady. That's not a good girl. You're a bad girl. Live on air. Everyone's seeing how bratty you are.
Is probably... Just because I haven't been spending a long time kind of focusing on finances, it's probably just advice I'm going to reiterate to myself for right now, and it's a concept that we've talked about a lot recently, and that it's that you should focus on making more money rather than saving money, because it's your favorite like word. It's like it's a loser's mindset.
Yep.
Because then you will spend your whole life kind of thinking you have like a financial ceiling.
Yep.
And like it's not fun saving money. It's not fun getting stressed about how much like a coffee costs or which groceries like.
And maybe you should clarify, when we're talking about saving money, we don't mean like go out and waste all your fucking money. That's not what we're saying. But you grew up in a household where your dad was like what you would call financially anorexic.
Yeah, and he had no need to be fair. Like,
he had a ton of money. He was fucking rich.
He's very well off, but he's still very, very frugal. Like wearing clothes until they have holes in them. Like doing all of like the equivalent of like very extreme couponing and like just doing silly things.
It's like a fear of what if I run out of money. Again, this is a guy who has like a ridiculous amount of money. Your dad's like got a fucking fuck ton of money.
Sure, my dad's fairly well off.
And you grew up with that mindset. I did too. Like my parents drilled that shit into me too.
Yeah, and so like especially when I started when I moved out of home and started buying things myself, I would catch myself, and sometimes still doing very silly things. Like when I'm buying groceries, I will opt for the option that I like significantly less because it's like 40 cents.
Yeah. I used to do the same shit.
Silly stuff like that. And
like this focus on save as much money as you possibly can at all times to the detriment of your enjoyment of life. That's what we're talking about. If you want to save money, like go for it. But you and I both are two people that do it to the detriment of happiness. Like we will, as you say, do the option we don't actually like just because it's cheaper, and then not enjoy it and go, well, I just saved myself 40 fucking cents. What was the point of that?
Yeah, or like having to eat food that you don't want, or like use products until they're all finished, even if like you should throw it.
Even if you don't like it as well. Like you and I, we would buy some food that we don't like, and we would just be like, well, I have to eat it. Yeah. And it's like, but I don't like it. Well, I have to eat it. Like me with the eggs. I fucking hate eggs. And I ate all the eggs. I fucking can't stand eggs, but I ate them all because it's like, but I can't throw these out. Yeah. And it's like, but they cost like $1. Like just throw it out.
Yeah. And some of it isn't necessarily just money. It's more about waste. But generally speaking, money-wise, I think I'm still kind of needing to get on board with the fact that like you can make more money.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, a more productive focus to make more money rather than just trying to have to save wherever you can.
Yeah, and let's give that as actionable advice, because you guys know I love actionable advice. It's been a mindset shift for you and I over the last like year or so. Exactly what you just said. You got two ways of like having money. You can either save money or make more money. If you're saving money, there is a limit to it. You can't just save infinite money. You can't, there's a limit to how much you can save. You have bills to pay. You can't pay less rent. Now you could go to a shittier apartment, but that's like a loser's mindset. You're spiraling downwards. You're going to rock bottom basically. Because how much do you keep cutting off? Oh, well, I could get rid of my phone as well, and then I wouldn't have to pay my phone bill. I could move into an apartment with like where I share with 5 people, and then I pay less rent. I could reuse my clothes.
Things like not turn on the heater because it costs money. So just
I used to do that too. Crazy. But like actually be unhappy to save yourself like $30 on electricity a month because you didn't run the heater as much. And it's like, but you were suffering the entire month. Was it really worth that $30? And so it's been a mindset shift, as I said, that you and I have wrapped our heads around this concept of like, you can just make more money. And to any of you guys listening who are like, whoa, Andy, but I work in an office or I have a job. It's like, you do understand that promotions exist, right? Like, I will never accept the excuse of like, oh, but I'm stuck in this job. It's like, get a promotion, take on more responsibilities for a month of your own volition, take initiative, do it yourself, and then go to your boss and say, hey, boss, look at all this extra shit I've been doing. Can we talk about a raise? Don't just go to your fucking boss and say, can I have a raise? And he'll say, for what? You're not doing anything, dipshit. You always need to be the one that takes initiative and be proactive. You can go to another workplace, get another job. You can start working on your resume while you're still at your current job and just start reaching out to other people, seeing what else is out there, applying for other jobs. Maybe one of them will say yes and you get a promotion, or maybe none of them will say yes, but you can then go to your boss and say, hey, boss, I've been looking for other jobs. Like, here's my resume, blah, 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 blah. Like, do you want to pay me more money so I stay? I've seen a bunch of guys. I had a friend who got it was like a 70% pay increase. He went from like $50,000 or something to like $90,000. Like, it was a fucking insane pay rise just because he went to his boss and finally got his shit together and said like, hey, boss, you know, I know you've been underpaying me for the last like 5 years and I'm a fucking coward, but I've finally like started working on my resume and other places want to hire me, but I like working here. Is there something you could do? And he's like, what do you want? How much money do you want? And he's like, well, you know, like 80, whatever he got paid, $90,000, whatever it was. And the boss is like, yep, sure, done. And he's like, whoa, shit. And then he's since gotten another pay rise since then. So or you could get another job. You could do some side hustles. You could drive fucking Uber. You could sell something. There is always different ways to make money. There will always be infinite ways to make money. And like we said before, it's a loser's mindset to go like, well, I got to save more, or I got to be stuck in this job. I only have a limited amount. It's like, who said you have a limited amount of monthly money? Who said that? You said that. Why have you just invented that shit? Well, I'm working this salaried job. Then get a fucking promotion. Take on more responsibility and ask your boss for a little bit of extra. Go somewhere else. Go to a different field. Work a second job. Sell something. Start a side business. Like, how do you think I started this coaching? This was a side fucking business when I worked a full-time job. I didn't just start this. I did this on the side. So my money advice, I want to just steal yours, honestly. Because I think that's been the most life-changing thing for me is like, I guess I can slightly tweak it and say there's no rules except for the ones you put on yourself. So I would go back maybe 3 years when I just started this coaching stuff and I'd be like, bro, just put your coaching to like, you know, $5,000. Like right now for 12 weeks of coaching, just put your coaching to $5,000 and start selling. Like, I could have done that 3 years ago, for sure. I absolutely could have. I just didn't believe that I could. And now it's like, dude, $5,000 is, would I take $5,000 for one-on-one coaching right now? No. Or would I say, why are you paying me so little? Fuck no, it's disgusting. Why are you only paying me $5,000? So like, and I'm sure we'll fast forward in like 10 years at some point. Who knows what the fucking limit is? It'll be something disgusting. It'll be something fucking atrocious. Like, I'm not going to sit down for you without you paying me $100,000. Like, why would I sit down for less than that? Again, that's like fast forwarding, but there's no limits except for the ones that we put on ourselves. I had the same shit with, you know, threesomes and stuff like that. Sex. I was like, I had all these rules on my head. Oh, you can't do this. You can't do that. How many people leave comments on my videos on like when I talk about being bald and they'll be like, oh, bald guys can't get laid. And it's like, says who? Says you, the person that made up that rule to make yourself feel better because you're not trying. Or someone will say, I can't have a threesome because I'm short, or I'm black, or I'm Asian, or I'm this, or I'm that. It's like, you've just invented that rule for no reason other than complacency. So you can sleep at night so it's comfortable. I used to do the same shit with money. I can never earn more than this amount of money. I can never charge more than this for my coaching. I can only charge $50 an hour for my coaching. Why? Says who? Says me. So I would go back in time and say there are no rules except for the bullshit ones you make. And that applies to all of you listening. You can charge whatever the fuck you want. Literally. People will either buy it or not. But you can charge whatever the fuck you want. There's no limit. If people don't buy it, make it a better product, do a better job, become more experienced, be a better coach or whatever it is you're selling. Sex, you can have sex with as many people as you want. Why not? Whoever you want. Why not? Like, there's no rule saying you can't. If right now girls don't sleep with you, keep improving yourself until they do. Or figure out a way to make them, not make them, but to get them to sleep with you. Become a better product. Become a better person. All right. Next one we will do is fitness/health. We'll just combine that into two. So what age would you go back to, and what advice would you give to that young, cute, adorable, but retarded Imogen from the past?
I would go back to my 11-year-old self, let's say 10-year-old self, because that was roughly around the age that I developed an eating disorder. For a bit of context, that was roughly when I started dieting and shortly became bulimic. So I would go back to myself at that age because I was a chubby kid, kind of always have been. So I would go back and tell myself, one, you can lose weight, but two, and probably more importantly, that you need to listen to your body. The way to lose weight isn't to not eat anything, because that will make you incredibly hungry. You're going to eat an insane amount of food. And that was kind of why I started making myself sick. And it's been something that has taken up until like just about now for me to actually deal with, and some very, very bad habits over a long period of time. So I would kind of get that, prevent that from happening if I could have, and basically just tell my little self that, like, you can lose weight, you can have the body that you want, but don't do it in a stupid way that it's going to cause problems later down the track.
I would give myself a similar one for the gym, for fitness. No, maybe I'll give a different one. I would say I would go back maybe like 5 years, maybe 5 or 6 years to when I first started lifting weights. And I would say, get a fucking coach. That's probably what I would say. I'm not someone that can do it by myself without, like, I need accountability. I just do. But I tried for ego to do it by myself for like 5 or so years. I see this with people, like with my coaching and shit. Same shit. They'll like try and do it by themselves. And now not everyone needs coaching, obviously. I'll make that fucking clear. But like the people who do will resist it for a long time. Another example, counseling. Some people need a fucking counselor or someone to talk to because they've gone through some shit, but they won't go and take the help or take the accountability. And I definitely resisted accountability with the gym for a long time until, let's just say it's only the last like month or two that I've actually started taking it seriously. I have a bodybuilding coach who keeps me accountable, weekly check-ins, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, how consistent am I now with the gym versus before? It's like night and day, right? It's like, I don't skip workouts now. I've never been able to say that in my entire life. Ever. I have a really bad cold right now. You can probably hear. And I've still gone to the gym and given 100%. The weights are going up. I'm still progressing while having a really fucking miserable cold, and I don't want to be there. And the whole time it's like, it takes me like twice as long to do the workout because I'm just so fatigued, but I'm still crushing it because I have a coach, because I let someone help me. So, and again, not everyone needs a fucking fitness coach. Not everyone needs a coach. They don't. But I personally did. And so I would say if you're listening and you've been trying in the gym for a long time, you know, like a year or two, and you're just not making any progress or you're not consistent, it's probably more the consistency than anything. If you can't be consistent by yourself, either pay a fucking coach or pay a personal trainer or just hit up a bodybuilder or something to give you some routines and keep you accountable, or take a friend with you to the gym, whatever you got to do. Like, reach out and get some help. Don't think that you have to do it by yourself for your ego. I did it for ego. I was like, I want to be a real man who can just lift weights in the gym without help. And it's like, sorry, Andy, you're not a real man. You're actually a faggot. So you need a friend or you need a bodybuilder. Fine, I'm fine with that. If I have to be a little pussy that needs a bodybuilder for the rest of my life, cool. Then I'll build an elite body with a bodybuilding coach. How is that any worse? But my old egotistical self, I used to have a really big ego around getting help, didn't I? I mean, this is something that's come up like a lot. I really did want to do everything by myself. I even told you early on in our relationship, I was like, I always want to be the lone wolf. And we had an LSD trip where I was like asking you those questions. I was like, do I have to be the lone wolf? Like, why do I have to do everything by myself?
And then we talked about how like you actually have had a lot of help along the way, even though when you've been like having that narrative of like, I'm all on my own.
People have helped me the entire time, and yet I've almost been ungrateful in the credit that I give other people. It's like, oh, I did everything by myself. And a lot of it I did, sure, fine. But I've had help with almost everything. Let's just say that. But I've in my head gone like, yeah, but I want to do it without them. And it's like, just accept that you're a shitty human that needs help. But that's every human. I don't know any people who don't need mentors or coaches or just advice or to read books or YouTube or like a podcast or friends or accountability, like something. No man is an island. No woman is either. You can't do all this shit by yourself. So,
and ultimately, like if that help propels you further than you would have.
I know, that's why it's so dumb with the fucking ego, because you're like, I want to do it my way. That was my mindset. I want to do it my way. And it's like, well, what if your way takes like literally 6 or 7 years to get less results than you could get in like 3 months? Yeah, but shit, okay, fuck, you're right. Like the number of people that will, I don't know, let's just use my coaching because that's what I have the experience with, that will like sign up to coaching and do like several years worth of work in like 2 weeks. Just because I'm yelling at them and saying like, no, not good enough. Fuck you. You got to go outside and talk to girls right now. Go outside and talk to, like I got one guy in the group right now who's taught to, or his mission is to talk to 100 women this week. He's never called a person in his entire life. And in 1 week, I'm like, bro, you have to get laid 4 times and talk to 100 women. And like, he's fucking doing it. He's on like day 3 and he's already talked to like 20 girls or something. And he's on like turbocharge. He's like already got like 3 dates set up for the next couple of days. He went on 1 date. He didn't have sex with her. He's going to, like, the point is, it's like, you can turbocharge your results if you just let other people help you. And again, it doesn't have to be a coach. It can be a YouTube channel or something like that. But I wish I didn't have such a big ego. So that's what I would do. All right, next one, mental health. What age would you go back to and what would you tell yourself?
I think I would go back to my 18-year-old self. I've had a history of struggling a little bit with anxiety and depression, but I think when I was 18, I made a lot of changes. I dropped out of uni. I moved out of home, got into my first relationship.
That's me.
Yeah. And I think all of that stuff piled on each other was really, really stressful at the time. And I was dealing a lot with anxiety. And I think I would just tell myself that, like, everything will be okay. Like, I'm sorry that you're feeling a bit shit now, but you kind of just need to write it out and, like, do the best you can. But, like, it's not going to be terrible forever. I know that's very, like, it gets better is, like, the most generic advice.
No, but it does. And to be clear, it only gets better if you're working on it. Don't just sit on the couch watching Netflix hoping it'll get better, because it won't. It'll get worse.
Yeah, of course. Like, I had to take the action to make it get better, but yeah, that it will. And it's probably not as long as you think it will be.
Yeah. I would go back, I don't know how many years it'd be at this point, like 10 years, maybe 10 years roughly, and teach myself to be self-aware. So that sounds vague. I would teach myself an actionable step, cognitive behavior therapy. If you guys are listening, it's basically just being aware of your own thoughts. But if you want to know where to get started, just start with the book, You Can't Afford the Luxury of a Negative Thought. I talk about that book all the goddamn time. That's what I probably would go back in time and give myself, that book. Because that book would have pulled me out of depression, would have taught me to be cognizant of how my own mind works, the negative thoughts in my mind, all of that stuff, the habits that I've built, how emotional I am, how angry I am, how bad I am at handling that anger. That book would have like saved me fucking 10 years of or 20 years of like heartache. So that's what I would do. Mm-hmm. Last one is social skills. What age would you go back to and what would you tell yourself in regards to like social skills or friends? I guess we can just say socializing. Socializing.
I've got 2.
Go, you can give 2.
My first one is me going back to my, let's say, like 11, 12-year-old self, which is when I was first going into high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was going through a bit of family shit at the time and, you know, puberty, going into high school, and I used that as an excuse. I was that kind of typical, like, edgy teen that, like fuck everyone else, and I would very much... I'd have a lot of... It was probably hatred towards, like, more popular
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, jealousy, hatred, yeah.
High school. Because I didn't feel like I was that. I had friends, but I didn't feel like I was part of the in-group. So it would it would just be me telling myself at that age, like, be nicer to people because other people are actually pretty nice. You just sometimes need to initiate that.
Yep.
And the second thing I would tell would be it'd actually probably be like my 16 or 17-year-old self, but I didn't really learn it until I was about 18 or 19, is that you don't have to hold on to all of your friends. You can break up with friends like you do with like a relationship. You can literally just like completely cut people off because I think high school very much developed like you can't stop burning bridges.
You can't because you're stuck with these people. I've said it a million times. High school is this weird incestuous like prison where you're stuck with people that you don't particularly like, but you have to just pretend to because you're stuck. Like you're there with it. You can't leave. You can't fuck off. Even a job, you could quit and go to a different job if you really hated them. So carry on.
Yeah, it would literally just be like you don't have to keep people around that you don't like or that aren't good for you.
And again, those 4 questions. Am I happy? Is the other person happy? Is the other person adding to my life more than they're taking away from it? Am I adding to theirs? Like that's what you ask of a friendship, those 4 questions.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I got a bit older, I was actually able to do that and felt so much better for it. I was able to make new friends.
Yeah, you cut a couple of friends off. I remember having that conversation with you. I was like, you don't have to keep all your high school friends, and most people don't. You're just doing it out of some misguided sense of like obligation. Yeah. And it's like, why? They're not adding to your life. Do you even relate to these people? Do you like them? And a couple of them, you were like, like that one in particular that you lived with for a little while, the blonde chick, and you were just like, I don't think I want to be friends with her. And I was like, then don't. And you were like, I don't think she's a good person. I think we just are friends because we were together like through high school. Mine would be go to meetup.com. That would be my socializing tip. Because I used to, honestly, like, I had like no fucking friends and I had no idea where to make friends. And I was just convinced like, oh, I just will have no friends forever. And so I Googled like, how do you fucking make friends? And like meetup.com came up. It's like
would you say?
I know, like 28, basically when I found like good looking loser and shit, when I started trying to get laid. So yeah, no friends for like fucking most of my 20s. And I was so convinced like you can't make friends. A lot of people come to me, like guys in my forums, coaching, whatever, and they'll say, I don't have any friends. It's too late for me. I missed my college years, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, just go to meetup.com. Like, what are you doing? Go to meetup. And they'll go on there and they're like, holy shit. Like you can just make friends. It's basically it's fucking free, obviously. It's like a social you call it like social networking but for friends. It's like a dating app website. That's mischaracterizing. Basically, you have like events or groups or things that people are going to do, and you can just RSVP and rock up to them. They're anything. There's like...
It's like the equivalent of, in the supermarket, how they have those boards of like all of these, like join the local sports team or join... It's like that.
Like a bulletin board. It's like a bulletin board website with like shit that people are doing. Like sports stuff. There's like trivia nights. There's like karaoke nights. There's like just socializing. There's like just going and getting drunk. If you're really nervous and you don't know what else to go to, just go to that. There's like food nights. There's movie nights. There's
business and networking ones.
Yeah, there's networking ones. There's self-improvement ones. That's what I used it for. There's like a lot of, if you want friends that are into the same sort of shit that we talk about on here, like self-improvement, go to philosophy groups. I know that sounds like, oh, but they're just going to sit around wanking over philosophy. It's like, no. Those people are very like self-aware and intelligent. They're the kind of friends that you want. Any like outdoors groups, like hiking, rock climbing, anything like that. Those people are crazy into self-improvement. Any fitness groups, they tend to be into self-improvement. Book clubs, depending on which ones you go to, debate clubs for sure. The more intellectual stuff, sure. Just don't. Yeah, no, the intellectual stuff as well. There's plenty of stuff. And then just like general shit. So I went on there. I went to a bunch of random shit. I went to like soap making classes. There was mostly women in that one. Candle making, mostly women in that one. I did like a magician's thing at some point, learned origami.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was fucking cool. I did a bunch of like trivia ones. That's where I made most of my friends. I made a bunch of self-improvement friends through a book club called it was called the Red Pill Book Club. I met like my best mate there. We're still mates like fucking like 10 years later at this point. 10? Like 8 years later, 7 years later, something like that. Philosophy groups were good. just the general socializing and drinking groups were good. Movie night ones were good. And then I went to a bunch of like tennis and different sports and stuff. Those were good. So I made a shit ton of friends on there. Everyone I ever recommend that website to is like, holy shit, thank you for recommending that. I've made like 5 friends. I remember one of my coaching clients from like years ago, one of the first clients I ever had, actually, he had no friends, 0 friends. And I made him go to Meetup, and then like, he did some wild shit. He did like trivia nights, but he ended up making friends with like a bunch of rich like millionaires and shit. These old millionaires. I swear to God, I'm not making this up. I should get him on the podcast at some point to tell this story. And so he went on, like, they took him on a yacht and shit. And they had like a sex cult, basically, because they were all old. It was like a cult. So they would like hire, I don't know if they hired hookers or they just had women, but like they would get women for like gangbangs and shit. And like, he was a virgin at the time, and they all were trying to like bully him out of his virginity. So they basically like got him a blowjob from like this. I don't know if she was paid, if she was an escort, or if she was just a woman, but like they're all watching. And so he said it was this the most fucked up experience of his life, but he loved it. It was like a bunch of like 50 and 60-year-old millionaires and like rich guys on a yacht watching him get a blowjob from this woman, and he can't get it up because obviously there's like people, he's nervous as fuck, and they gave him like Viagra and shit, but that still didn't help. And then finally he got it up for a while, and then like it was just this like weird fucking sex cult, and he loved those guys. Those guys were like fucking, yeah. So he made like a bunch of friends like that. So I'm not promising you guys that if you go on this website you'll do that, but I mean, I've made a bunch of friends on that website. It's a good fucking website, and I wish I'd known that existed, because too many guys, and I'm sure there are girls out there too, but I see too many guys that don't have any friends, especially guys who focused on their career in their 20s and 30s, and then go, I have no fucking friends. Shit, was I supposed to make friends? Yeah, you kind of need friends. You need a support network. Otherwise, you're never going to do as well with self-improvement. And so I tell them, go on Meetup, and they're like, oh my God, thank you for telling me this. This website is a lot. And I love that it's fucking free as well. Like, there's not even a membership or anything. You literally, I don't even think they take money. And I think the only way they make money is when you have a group.
Yeah, like you're the group owner, then you have to pay
yeah.
a fee.
And I don't think that fee's very much. I think it's like $50 a year or something. I think it's really fucking cheap for even the person that owns the group, because one of my friends owned it and it wasn't that expensive. Anyway, so guys and girls, they go, that's our fucking what we would go back. What I want you guys to do is leave a comment below with your 6 things that you would go back in time. You can use the 6 categories that we did if you want to, or you can make up your own. Tell us what age you would go back to for each one, or you can just pick one if you don't want to do all 6 and say what your advice would be. So those are dating, sex, money, fitness/health, mental health, and socializing. Or you can make up your own categories if you want. And after all of that, how do we end our thing? You got to go out and crush your goals. You got to say it. Now go out and crush your fucking goals. Say it.
Go out and crush your fucking goals.
That's very crass. I wouldn't speak like that, but women can be very crass and rude sometimes, guys. It's what you put up with in order to have sex with them. Don't make that face at me. Make that face at me. Make that face at me. Make that face.